This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 483, recorded on March 18th, 2021. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in Mike. Freezing, warm, freezing again. I think we got some 60s coming in for the weekend. You got to be excited. Did the fence get put up?
The fence did get put up. Finally, we have the fence up. My dog is happy. It's all good. And yeah, the grass is already turning green over on this side of the city.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, no, it's getting there. I think that there's some hope. Raz, our guest tonight, he's coming in from Denver. Raz, did you survive the storm of the century?
We did. It was underestimated by many of us, but there was probably a solid 20 inches by Monday morning or so. So that's in 24 hours. That's a legit snowstorm.
Yeah, it's a typical Denver. I mean, I think they were saying kind of like this is a every 10-year storm or something like that. Would that be kind of accurate? Now, you spent some time in Silicon Valley. They never get weather like that out there. So.
No, I mean, a bad day is 58 and sprinkling in the Bay.
They get a little bit of rain and they're mad.
Yeah, no, yeah. It is. That is not as much anymore, given all the drought issues. But for many years, yes, there was a lot of venom around rainy days. So, yeah, this is a rare one. I mean, I've been out in the Denver area for almost 5 years, and I travel a fair amount. I mean, this is the first year that, for like many of us, not traveled a lot. But no, I do not remember a snowstorm like this in the last 5 years. And I think it was probably 10, 15 years ago.
I think that's what they said, those 10, like a 10-year storm. But it's gone mostly.
It's almost gone. I mean, people running in T-shirts. I saw a guy in a tank top today wearing flip-flops. I mean, this is the weird weather of Colorado, is that 2-3 days later it's summer gear, so it's almost all gone.
Yeah, and we're getting there too. We had a bunch of snow on the ground that we got some warm weather and it's gone, and I think we're going to see 60s this weekend, and 60s Fahrenheit for our international friends. and it's going to be pretty great. Well, of course, we'll post the show notes out at theaverageguy.tv. If you want to find this one, use HGG483 to find it as well. Raz, have you jumped in on this crypto craziness that's going on at all? I know we didn't plan to talk about that. We're going to talk about some other things here in a second, but
I have. Well, so I have. It's funny. I've been having a lot of conversations about this much more recently. Between Wall Street bets and crypto over the last 90 days. This has become the new kind of pop culture topic. I did years ago. I wish I'd kept the shares that I bought in Bitcoin years ago. Of course, I mean, I ended up selling and making what I thought at the time was a lot of money, but it was nothing compared to what I could have made had I had half a dozen shares of Bitcoin today. So I have not really. I have my own personal perspective though on this is one. I just look at it as like straight out gambling, because I do not know enough in that arena to really make good bets on that. I mean, if I were to do anything again, I think I would do dollar cost averaging and just do it for the long haul. But two is most of my personal investment is very conservative, because what I do in my day job is so high risk in terms of, early stage companies and going through the growth paces. I mean, that's my Bitcoin, so to speak, where I have some control over it, but then I kind of balance my portfolio by buying value stocks and doing pretty boring stuff on the equity side.
I think that's a good call. I think you got it balanced well. We've been encouraging folks to know before you buy, kind of deal. Mike and I both use Coinbase. If you head out to theaverageguy.tv/Coinbase, and a bunch of you, they keep signing up, Mike, which is super great. So if you sign up and with your first trade of 100 or more, you get 10 additional. We get 10 additional here, and it works out pretty well. But Raz, I love the way you're approaching this. It's like, and we're going to talk about why your day job is a little risky here in just a second. We think from an investment standpoint. And so I always encourage people, know what you're doing. It's easy to get caught up in this crypto frenzy, and all of a sudden, your stimulus check is gone. So don't be that guy. Right?
Yeah.
Know what you're doing. go into it. Coinbase is a great way to get that done. You can head in there. There's some learning modules. You don't have to do anything. You just pop in. Mike, I like on the app, it's just my favorite app to go into to see what the other coins are selling at, where the market is going, some of those kinds of things. Do you find yourself opening that up from time to time?
Yeah, I do. And I got into those learning modules you had talked about a while ago, and those are pretty cool. And I think that they had a lot more than the last time I had checked. I think there were about 6 different coins that I did a learning module on to learn their kind of their background. And we've talked about this in the past, Jim. I love learning about all the different, use cases that people are coming up with for crypto and all the different theories and the white papers they're putting behind them and the different algorithms they're using. So it's been a lot of fun. And it's funny you mentioned it, because you and I, right before we started the show, I said, Jim, your video and audio is out of sync to me. I hadn't turned off mining on the computer that I'm using right now. So my video card was 100% pegged for mining and not doing a very good job doing the video.
Yeah, that'll
Figured
do
out the
it.
problem.
Good thing we caught that. Well, if you want to check it out, theaverageguy.tv/Coinbase, and then a big thanks to our Patreon subscribers as well. Your faithfulness every single month matters to us, and we appreciate you guys scrolling on the screen. Thanks for all you do. And I will be putting together a Patreon meetup for you guys here shortly. And Mike, I owe him a Tesla meetup. Not even a meetup. We're going to do a Tesla roundtable. So get your, if you've bought a Tesla recently or in the last couple of years and you want to talk about it, send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. We'll be scheduling 1 or 2 of these Tesla roundtables as well. All right. Raz from Flowater is with us. And Raz, thanks for just jumping into the craziness here. You're the CEO and co-founder. Again, whenever you say co-founder, that means it's a startup, right? Give us a little bit of the background of what you do and a little bit of background history on the company as well.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So thanks again, Jim and Mike, for having me on the program. It's a lot of fun. And I love the informal approach that you guys take. I've also learned a few things about beer that I've jotted down along the way. So for sharing the knowledge, hopefully I can reciprocate that. So Flowater is a company that's a mission-based movement that is fully focused on changing the way the world drinks water. And what that means specifically is that our objective is to put an end to single-use plastic water bottles and to also rebuild water infrastructure, basically, to provide the world's best tasting, most trusted drinking water wherever consumers work, rest, and play. So that's the apex summary of the company and our vision and our mission. And there's a lot that goes into it and kind of, well, what does that mean? And why are you doing what you're doing? What's wrong with bottled water? And should I go drinking it and all that stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into. But effectively what we're trying to do is build the world's first brand of tap water and get people to fall in love with tap water again, and to move to a world of uncycling where we don't have to ship water everywhere. Now, beer is a different story. I mean, you do need to ship beer everywhere. That's an essential that's an essential beverage here. So
they're going to come to your place with pitchforks and the torches.
No, I'm advocating. I'm saying it's very understandable, but and I'm also a pragmatist. I mean, but when you're literally bottling something, you're extracting natural resources out of Fiji, and then you're throwing it in a tanker truck, and then you're spewing CO2 everywhere. And then you're shipping it, CO2 everywhere in these semi trucks, and then it goes to a retailer. I mean, you've literally just, done a 99.9. You've done like the most inefficient un-Tesla. Like anyone that just bought a Tesla, you might as well just like throw 1,000 pounds of jet fuel out if you're drinking bottled water, and that's kind of how insane. That's kind of how insane it is, and so. Our mission is to bring awareness to that in a fun way, in an inspirational way, and to some degree a convicting way, and make something better. That's actually the great Tesla metaphor is, as a former Prius owner, super environmentally conscious, super uncomfortable, super slow, super not cool, right? And I owned one. It's one of the best cars I've ever owned. But
I have a Civic Hybrid.
Okay,
so I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah.
But what Elon did that's so brilliant is he took one of the facets of that, and then he made all the other things better. So now like your program is going to be all these people talking about how fast it is in autopilot mode and it's badass, and then they all feel good because they're doing something good for the environment. And that's actually how we're going to shift history, I think, as it relates to water and plastic. Is, well, we can't just tell people what you're doing is bad. We have to provide a better platform, a better solution that they get inspired and excited about.
Raz, as we look at tap water in the United States, and like it's location by location, right? So everybody needs to kind of know what's going on. But what's really wrong? Like, what's wrong with our tap water in a lot of cases? I'm sure you guys have looked into this, but certainly here in Bellevue, Nebraska, I get a good water report from our water company all the time that says, no, your water is really good, but not everybody has that advantage, right?
Well, yes, that's exactly right. And there's actually two pieces that I would probably break this down into. One is that, from whomever you get your water report from, I have no doubt that it is exactly as it says it is at the point of processing, so to speak, or at the municipal water treatment facility. The problem is that it's running through the delivery agent for that is decades old pipes that are full of rust and lead and sediment. And so, the problem number one, a good metaphor for that would be like you're doing food prep in the kitchen. You've got this amazing steak and it's grass fed and organic. And then on the way to the grill, you just drag it on the floor, and then you throw it on the grill. Well, like it started great and you got this great like vehicle where you're going to like do this big green egg and you're going to like cook something or roast something or smoke something. And you just dragged it along the floor on the way there and it got dirty and that's disgusting. You don't want to eat that. And that's a lot of the issue with tap water. I mean, that's kind of problem number one is that it's nothing municipal can do to really solve it. It's a multi-trillion-dollar problem. That's a 30 to 50-year problem that can never get fixed. And so problem number one is infrastructure, super outdated, super old. And this is why if you look at 25% of the households in the United States, Popular Science did a sampling about 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was, 25% of the samples taken had higher than EPA levels of acceptable lead. And that's a tragic issue. People are consuming lead at kind of record levels, not knowing it because there's no kind of simple way to test for lead. Second issue is that if you look at what's in tap water now, it's a lot different than it was 30, 50 years ago, right? And so 50 years ago, there were no plastics that were making its way into the waterways. There was no glyphosate. So glyphosate became a agricultural product, which is known as Roundup, became an agricultural product widely used in the early 70s. And so now here we are about 50 years later, right? Where Roundup is in our food and waterways, and you're literally drinking Roundup in your tap water, and you're literally drinking bottled water. In fact, most people think, bottled water is not bad so long as you're not drinking bottled water. And the problem is that we're now all literally drinking bottled water because the way that plastics degrade is they don't biodegrade, they photodegrade. So one piece turns into 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64 until it becomes microplastics under a couple microns or nanoplastics smaller than that. And now we're drinking it. So the average American drinks 1 credit card worth of plastic, eats or drinks, consumes, but a lot of it is through drinking, and it's not drinking beer. It's drinking water from your tap, for example, 1 credit card worth of plastic every week. So that's a lot like smoking, I think, in the sense that, smoking a cigarette one time, no big deal. Maybe in the right circumstances, is even good for you. That 1 or 2 times, whatever that is for you, a campfire, and you're drinking beers with a bunch of buddies. But, you drink 10,000, you're not going to feel so good, or smoke 10,000, you're not going to feel so good. 100,000, you start to have negative health consequences. And that's just like anything. There's a dose effect to it. And that's the problem with tap water is tap water has gotten basically degraded so heavily that, I find it, now that I've studied this for 8 years, I find it very, very difficult to drink tap water, but I generally will refuse to drink bottled water, certainly out of a PET bottle.
Well, so that's tap. What's the bottled water problem besides it collecting in the oceans? And I mean, that gets high visibility, right? Everybody knows we're dumping that stuff in our oceans, but what's wrong with bottled water? Isn't it clean? I mean, isn't it a cleaner alternative?
Well, so it's funny when I talk to people about bottled water. I mean, generally one of the stats that I'll use is there's going to be more plastic than there are fish in the ocean by the year 2050, and everyone is like, oh gosh, it's so sad for the sea turtles and everything. But then they don't do anything. Like they do that while they say that while they're drinking their bottle of water. They're like, that is horrible. And I literally have had this conversation so many times with so many people that I've had people just empathize while drinking bottled water. And when I tell those same people, though, that in an average, in over 90% of bottled water samples that were surveyed by SUNY about 2 years ago in New York, University of New York, over 300 over 300 microparticulates of plastic per liter of water. So there's a couple of issues with bottled water. One is that it's in 50% of the cases, it's literally tap water bottled at a bottling plant and then shipped to you. So it's like the most insane delivery mechanism that if someone were to draw kind of a line of like the story of bottled water, it would just be this wild squiggly line. Then it ends up back basically, right where the faucet is. And so 50% of bottled water is literally just tap water that's packaged up and sold for 99.9% markup. The second issue, though, is this microplastics issue, right? This microplastics, this is no insignificant issue. And so there are, for example, in cigarettes, in the production of cigarettes, there are about 6,000 known chemicals that go into the production of cigarettes. In bottled water and in the plastics that go to create PET that bottled water is encased in, there are over 10,000 known chemicals that are used to actually create the plastics. So when you start thinking about things that you're ingesting, you're literally lining your esophageal tract, you're lining your gastrointestinal tract and your small and large intestine with water that has the permeation of small microplastics. I think we're going to find at scale, and when I say at scale, like 5-10 years from now, I think the data is going to be absolutely mind-boggling. The negative health effects that have propagated over time as a result of basically drinking our bottled water. And we're seeing that now, plastics have chemicals in them that are endocrine disruptors. There's some belief out there in the market that one of the reasons for the rise in obesity is not just sugary foods and sodas and whatnot, which of course to some degree that is, but other people believe it's an endocrine disruption that has occurred through an endocrine disruptor, which can be done and had via plastics and the ingestion of plastics and those chemicals. So kind of no matter how you slice it, bottled water is, it's certainly bad for the environment, but it's also bad for you. It's interesting too, when I talk to people about the negative effects of how many microplastics are in an average bottle of water that you're actually drinking and landing your stomach. That's the point at which people put the bottle down. When it's the fish that are, not entirely, but there's some people that are just great human souls that will stop doing something that they love because it's bad for something else, right? But that's kind of not the way most of the world works, right? And human nature is it's kind of the statistic. It's kind of the adage that, when 10,000 people die, it's a statistic, and when one person dies, it's a tragedy. And it kind of ends up being, once you personalize it, it starts to take effect and cause behavioral change. So those are some of the issues with bottled water that we're trying to solve for.
All right. And how long has bottled water really been a thing? Right? Like, how long has it been popular for? Do we know? Do we have enough data there to start seeing some of these stats come in on the effects of it?
In terms of what it's doing, the implication of bottled water.
Yeah.
There's not really. This is, I think this is one of the great greenwashings done by big bottled water in many ways. In fact, if you look at a lot of the great marketing that's done by, I think, some of the world's best marketers, which are people that are marketing a product that has no need, that they're creating desire that elicits a purchase and does something horrible for the environment, they get consumers to pay 99.9% more than it would cost if they just got it out of the tap. So those guys are geniuses. And I think one of the things that does not get explored in those cases until consumers get enough kind of intellectual horsepower around, and just awareness. They have the intellectual horsepower, they just don't have the awareness, or enough studies get commissioned where you start to really look at, well, what are the effects of drinking bottled water over time? What are the effects of microplastics that are in bottled water? Now in our tap water, by the way, there's also over 90, this is an amazing thing to me, is same study done, SUNY, found over 90% of bottled water has over 300 microplastics per liter of water. They actually also found that 90% of tap water samples had the same, on average, 300 microplastics per liter of water. So the reality is that whether you're a smoker or not, you're smoking, kind of. It's like being in a room with 10 people, one smokes, the other 9 don't. But if one person's smoking in the room, 10 people are smoking. And that's the thing. That's the issue with bottled water. And so I think we'll see some of that data come out. There's, we're starting to see data around glyphosate and Roundup. And there, if you look at the incidence, I pulled some research and found some stuff that was kind of buried deep in the web, where there was some research that showed the direct proportional increase of the incidence in the use of Roundup and the direct overlay of an increase in renal cancer, testicular cancer, Crohn's disease, and there were half a dozen other diseases and cancers. So I think we'll start to see those corollary match up as it relates to things that are in bottled water and microplastics that we shouldn't be drinking. But there's not a lot of information, not a lot of data on it right now. I did just read an article though about a month ago. They're finding microplastics now in it was either or both a pregnant woman's placenta, women's placentas, and or umbilical cords. So I mean, think about that for a second, which is like literally it's making its way into organs in the earliest formation of life. And when we start to play that out and see what happens, I think people are going to be shocked, which is why it's an easy switch. It's an easy, this is not, giving up bottled water is not unlike stopping smoking, which is hard to do. Stopping bottled water is not that hard to do. It's a lot, if you can find a product that you like in place of that, it's just a habit. And it's just one of those things that we have to bring awareness to encourage people to change.
One of the things, as you were mentioning this, for the last decade or so, I've been running all over the planet. I ran 5 marathons and I've been running here and running there. And of course, at the end of every race, they hand you bottled water. And I was thinking, I wonder when the last time, now during the pandemic, of course, I haven't been out, I've been doing things. And I'm actually having a hard time remembering the last time I had bottled water.
Well, what do you do? What do you drink out of the faucet, or do you have a filter?
We have a filter that we use. We have a pitcher that's got a filter in it that we use. But it's just funny thinking, like, man, the pandemic has actually slowed that down. Now I know as we get back to normal, we're going to see it all. We're going to see it all show up again. Okay. So I'm scared to death. you did your job, Raz. Like, no, I say that jokingly, but in all seriousness, Mike, we live in the Midwest where Roundup Ready corn has been used for decades, right?
Yeah.
And when we're starting to see some of these things as well come in, and I'm thinking, okay, you don't have to convince me anymore. I kind of get it. Let's talk a little bit about, so what are you trying to do? And so for folks listening either to the podcast or live on YouTube, 2 things I want to remind you before we get too much farther, because as we get into this, I don't want you guys to turn this off and don't get this. So one is Raz has provided a code for us, 20% off the products we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So if you get Hydrate, HYDRATE 20, if you use Hydrate 20 at the store at Drink Flowater, and that flow only has 1 W. I like the way you said that, FLO, and then water at home.com. I'll have all those links in the show notes. So you can just head out to theaverageguy.tv/HGG483 or the newest episode that's out there. And you can get both that code and the link to do it as well. And then one of the products we're going to talk about is the Flowater faucet filter, right? This is one of those that you put on the end of your faucet. I want to hear from listeners, if you're in a spot where you really feel like your water's bad, like if you're just if you're just really worried about your water and you don't have a great way to filter it for some reason, and you want to give this a try, I'll ship this to you here in the United States. Unfortunately, it's tough to ship these outside the United States for me because it gets super expensive mostly. We'll send you these. We're going to talk about them here in a second. So send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv, and the first 2 that have great stories on how bad their water is, we'll get these shipped out to you as well. If you don't get a chance to do that, use Hydrate 20 at drinkflowwater@home.com for the products we talk about. Okay, Raz, so let's talk about the technology you're using then. What are you guys doing to solve this problem?
So the fundamental idea of our company ends up being that we want to provide Flowater devices wherever consumers work, rest, and play. So in some cases, this could be a faucet filter that screws on to just a standard ordinary faucet. You cannot have a pull-out faucet. If you have a pull-out faucet, then in that case, we will have another product for you probably in the next year, which will be a Flowater countertop unit. And then we also have Flowater on the go, which is prepackaged in non-PET aluminum vessels, where you'll be able to buy this. You can either buy it on the website at Drink Flowater at Home or through retailers. And then our primary product that we launched with, which we have, we're well on our way to 10,000 Flowater refill stations that are primarily in businesses. So these are in, hotels, a lot of schools. I mean, our school business has just absolutely exploded over the last 6-9 months because people care more than ever about something that's touchless, contactless, and also it eradicates viruses and bacteria. So that's a refill station right there. And what that does is that just drops in. You can also buy it on the Flowater Drink Flowater at Home website. It is not an inexpensive piece of technology. I'll just forewarn you that's $6,000. That's $60. So
neither are Teslas, by the way. Let's just be clear about that.
Well, you can't finance that one too, just like you can a Tesla. So for a couple $100 a month, you can have Flowater on demand in your house in that refill station. And most of the people that end up having that what was more of a commercial grade machine are people that have really nice home gyms, or they have kind of a home office setup that's pretty substantial. They're not going to a school or a corporation or an office setting. And so we've got everything from a $60 Flowater faucet filter that will do a really great job of improving the quality of your tap water to building out a very powerful and proprietary Flowater refill station. And essentially what happens, just going back to your question, like what is it that it does, and how does it work, and what are we building? Well, what we're really building is a way to get people to fall in love with tap water again. So the problem that we have in the US, the reason that bottled water is so pervasive is not only because big bottled water are great marketers, but it's convenient and you develop an affinity for your brand. Just like I'm sure if you were to throw a beer label on one of your favorite beer labels on any type of beer, you would at least have a couple cadences higher of respect for that beer, even if you didn't naturally love it, just because you love the brand or you love the story, or you love the experience that you had when you were drinking it sometime. And so we're trying to get people to fall in love with tap water again. We don't have a problem called if I could only find a faucet, or if I could only find a water fountain, if I could only find a nozzle or a spigot. No, we don't have that issue in any kind of first world country. We have an issue called, like, I don't like what's coming out of there, or I don't like the smell of that, or I don't like the taste of that, or I don't like chlorine or fluoride or total dissolved solids or glyphosate. And so, our goal ultimately, I'd be thrilled someday, 10 years from now, if we do wildly successful on this, but then eventually migrate people off of Flowater on the go, other than when you are literally on the go and you need something. But, I'd love for people to be able to go and fill up at their tap source. And the way to solve that is make their tap better. So kind of in tech, I used to run a couple tech companies, and one of the tech expressions that many of you, I'm sure, have heard many, many times over is kind of, you hear entrepreneurs talk about sometimes owning the last mile, that ends up being kind of the long tail, whether it's microsites or blogs or a roll up of e-com and in the long tail. That's kind of, to me, our owning the last mile, kind of using some of my tech background just from a nomenclature perspective, means to us owning the last 6 feet of water line, much in the way that kind of cable companies have now ultimately controlled what's coming in and out of your pipes in your homes, and will someday in the next 5, 10, 15 years have a lot more control over what you see and what in kind of a Facebook-like way of serving up content. That's ultimately the goal in the home and in businesses and in schools, but to do it in kind of a utopian environment in a way that gets everyone access to clean drinking water that they can trust. Part of our, I'll kind of end with this, but a part of our entire existence is to democratize water. This company is founded on the fundamental belief that everybody deserves access to clean drinking water that they can trust. And so that's what we're after. And we're doing that with those products that I mentioned.
Raz, I use a pitcher that's got a filter in the center of it in the top. how are you guys different, or is it the same? Am I okay using one of those?
Well,
Is
yes,
it,
absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of placebo. So if you think you're okay with that, please, the placebo effect is very real. So, if you think
nicely
you're okay
said,
with it,
nicely
if
said.
you think you're okay with it, I would tell you, I used one of those. I prior to Flowater or before I had a Flowater device in my house. Yeah, I did, and it like let me kind of put this in a spectrum. For example, um, I think pretty unequivocally, it would, and also as an objective a way as possible, I can tell you a Flowater refill station on a scale of 1 to 10 is an absolute 10. I mean, we were dropping these in Flint, Michigan. We gave $100,000 of Flowater refill stations away to Flint, Michigan, very, very early in our company's existence. And we were literally taking water coming out of the tap lines in Flint, Michigan that were as dark as urine, that were 43 times the EPA allowable limit for lead. And we would run it through a Flowater proprietary purification system, and out was coming something that had undetectable levels of lead over and over through thousands and thousands of gallons, all certified through third-party labs and validated through third-party labs. So that is the Flowater refill station, and if you wanted a free trial of that, just mention, you can email our company or send an email to support@drinkflowater.com and mention Jim and Mike, and I'll make sure you get a free trial of that for your office or a hotel or a school that your kids go to. But that is a 10. This is like a solid 4 to 5, right? Which is, this has a 5-layer filter. It does not have reverse osmosis. It will not extract every virus out of that water. It'll extract most bacteria though. So a Flowater faucet filter will remove chlorine, microplastics, a lot of bacteria, has a 5-layer filter. And then what I would describe as kind of the countertop filter or the pitcher filters on a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably put that as like a 1 or a 2. And it's not bad. It's going to remove a little bit of chlorine. It's going to make it taste a little bit better. It's going to remove sediment. It's going to do a really not a solid job of removing sediment. The problem is that in that like small little mesh carbon filter, there's just only so much you can do. Like when you see a picture of that refill station, sometimes when I'm doing a demo of the product, people think that I'm going to open it up and it's just going to be like, and maybe there's a blowout even of what's inside, like a CAD of it. I don't know if it's on that website. I think sometimes people just think that there's like a hose just going into that, and then you open it up and then it's just dispensing out like a water fountain, because that's what you see in a water fountain. It's like basically a water fountain has a tap water line and it's going through a very small filter and it's going out. That thing is like plowed full of technology. I mean, there's 7 different layers of technology that are in those refill stations: a SETI carb filter, remineralization, alkalinity, an actual ozone generation machine that's shooting O3 throughout the machine 4 times a day so that it sanitizes and purifies the tank. So it's not going to be anywhere like that, but is it better than drinking straight tap water? Absolutely. Absolutely. And does it make your tap water safer? Yeah, it does. So if you like it and you love that product, I would say, gosh, encourage you to keep using it. I will tell you, in the next year, we are going to, this kind of Tesla of water, if I can use that, it always makes me cringe when you get some dude from San Francisco that's like, oh, we're the Airbnb of this and the Tesla of that and the Apple of that. But I will say Tesla was a lot of inspiration for this company, which is, well, how do you reimagine water? And I would love someday to, a year from now, come back on this and do maybe kind of a Flowater recap, kind of like a Tesla recap once we have the Flowater countertop units. Mm-hmm. So we will have kind of the Tesla of water for your counter, which will get you guys some machines as well, which will be a great replacement someday for your pitcher filter.
Yeah, well, I'm not necessarily in love with it. We do it as kind of a defense against it to get whatever we like. We like our water here in Bellevue, but now I'm scared to death. I'm not even gonna touch it anymore. I'm gonna close my mouth when I'm taking a shower. Not really. I'm just kind of joking. But what kind of, and I know you mentioned the word proprietary a couple times, but we got a bunch of gadget nerds on this. So you mentioned a few of the technologies that's in this, but is there anything, when you think about like how cool is this from a gadget standpoint? I mean, this thing is really doing some incredible stuff to the water before it comes out of its, the spigot for you to get it, right?
There is. So there are 7 stages of purification. So in fact, someday I just need to go to a pond. A lot of people in California don't know what a pond is, but for those of us,
they're all dried up at this point.
yeah, well, that probably is true. But I mean, they know what oceans are, and they know they're high sensitivity to plastics in the ocean, but not a lot of pond awareness like there is for us Midwesterners. I grew up in Ohio, so I mean, like what you would go do on a Friday night would be go fish in a pond, and I did that with my grandparents for many nights. And so you could literally hook a Flowater refill station up to a pond, and out would come, like, unquestionably, we could put this head to head, and we've done this with your favorite bottled water, and 8 out of 10 times we'll get consumers that will take Flowater over Fiji, for example, and blinded taste tests, and we could literally be pulling it out of a pond or heavy lead levels in Flint or the ocean for that matter. It won't work at scale because it's not designed to do that. But going back to the question, the way that works is through kind of the power of this purification system. And so carbon filters are very regularly used. And in fact, what you have in your pitcher filter at home, Jim, is a carbon filter, which is great. We use a carbon filter as well. It's like kind of stage 1 of chlorine removal, and it's good to have it. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's kind of like 1 to 2, so it gets you from like 0 to 1.5 or 2. But what happens after, and what really gets powerful, is when you start to incorporate things like reverse osmosis. And so reverse osmosis works via these semi-permeable membranes, and literally only pure H2O can cross through there. So what you're left with is something post RO, post reverse osmosis, and we use a proprietary version of reverse osmosis called advanced osmosis, which processes water 5 times faster with up to 1/5 the wastewater. What you're left with is literally pure H2O. I mean, it's as close as you can get to distilled water using a system like ours, advanced osmosis, without it actually being distilled water. And so when you see kind of what happens, and like the geek part of me gets excited about that, when you're sitting in Flint, Michigan, and you see water that's the first draw out of and I wish I had a photo. Next time I'll know which props to bring visually, but
no worries.
It literally looks like urine, that first draw. And when you can see something that actually extracts all of those impurities in the water, it is something that's pretty easy to geek out on. But what most or some people don't know is you don't want to be drinking distilled water. Have you ever consumed? I mean, have you ever drank distilled water?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have.
It tastes weird, right?
It does.
It's like there's something missing, right?
The minerals.
Like exactly. It's the minerals that are there's literally something missing in them. Yeah. And so it doesn't have any sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. And so what our system does is go through in a proprietary way, remineralizes the water with 4 electrolytes that are needed not only for taste but also for hydration. And then there's an alkaline filter in there as well, which will actually increase the alkalinity by up to 1.5 pH. And then there's a final finishing filter, which what we use are these coconut husks. It's actually the shell specifically, but the husk and the shell, and you carbonate the shell by burning it, literally turning it to carbon, and then you crush it, and then you put it into a filter. And when I say like you do, it's not like it's me doing this in the garage. I mean, there's a manufacturing process for this, of course, but
this is not a DIY solution.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I would highly not recommend trying to carbonate your own coconut and brew your own water at home.
We'll have somebody try. By the way,
that sounds kind of fun, though. It does sound fun.
Oh, I don't recommend it, but if you do it, I do recommend you invite me to whatever party that's being had to do that. And so that is an insane way to make the water taste really fresh and clean and crisp. So all of these processes have kind of different intentions and stages to changing literally the chemistry of the water, from like the very first stuff that comes in, all of the extraction of viruses, bacteria, and dissolved solids, and then through some of those stages that I actually mentioned to you guys. So it is kind of cool. I had no idea. I mean, I'm a non-water guy that came into a category, and looked at it and said, how do we, me and a small group of people said, how do we reinvent a category? And so, if you look at a lot of companies that have done something radically different, it's kind of taken somebody from the outside to come in, and maybe the naivety is actually of benefit in some regards.
So on that filtration, then, how much of that is in the tap water version of what you guys?
In this one?
Yeah, in that one.
This is a 5-stage carbon filter. Okay. So within this, there's a polypropylene screen wrapper. There's activated carbon absorption. There's a carbon block, which has microfiltration. And then there's an inhibition layer for limescale and heavy metals. And then there's a strainer mesh. So there are some pieces that are specific to just this that are actually a lot heavier duty as it relates to kind of this carbon block, the mesh, because that's all you can really do in a smaller device like this that would go onto a faucet filter at home, for example. So this does an amazing job of eradicating chlorine, super fast fills, and for $60 one time, and then very infrequent filter replacements thereafter, you're getting something that's really close to bottled water on tap with this product. Now, going back to kind of like the Tesla of water metaphor that I use, that's the refill station. And so someday when we launch a Flowater refill station that's going to go on your countertop, going to be plug and play, and it's going to have all these systems in it and remineralization and increased alkalinity and electrolytes and all of that, that'll probably be close to $1,000 machine that will be available again sometime roughly in about a year. So the idea is to basically just make a miniaturized version of that super commercial grade Flowater refill station for the home. And ultimately, I mean, going back to the whole focus of our company, which is this is a mission to change the way the world drinks water and to provide Flowater wherever consumers work, rest, and play. So having an option for people that have $60 is an important thing for us to do, even if it's not kind of the full effect version. And then, for those people that can afford it, mostly it's businesses that are leasing this for $125 a month. They're leasing a Flowater refill station. But, having kind of a variety of mid price points between $60, $1,000 and $5,000 for $6,000 for commercial purposes is kind of a part of the platform, and you get better effect as you go up the pay grade there.
So Rez, hold on, Mike. I could buy it for $6,000, or I can lease it.
Well, you can. So yeah, if you go to the Drink Flowater at Home website, drinkflowater.home.com website, it's going to list it there where you can actually buy the unit for $6,000. And again, I always want to kind of preface that comment, which is, I know more than a few people that are not like Silicon Valley tech billionaires, but I know for a good number of people that for $6,000 to have something that they can have on demand, what is the world's kind of best tasting water, and eradicate their bottled water habit. I know a surprising number of people that have done that for their household. And, I have one down in my garage here. I've got one in another place that is in a kitchen. And so, it's a very suitable device for the home, but it's not a very inexpensive device. You can finance it through, I don't know who were you. In fact, I'm trying to pull it up real quickly, but you can finance it through a firm, I believe, but it's not pulling up right now. I have to actually check out, but you can finance it through a firm. Now, a firm is, one of the companies that when you check out on Amazon, for example, you can finance your toothbrush or whatever you're buying. We do with businesses, though, we have different lease terms. So rather than selling the units to them, often what we'll do with businesses is we'll lease the product to them. So they can lease it for $4 a day. A business or a school or a gym, or we have a lot of essential businesses, firehouses, police stations, mayor's office, distribution centers, digital server storage centers, for example, has been part of our business that we expect to grow, 100x over the next 12 months, because those are running all the time now, especially now, right? You have to have someone manning the
they're in there
servers,
all the
and
time,
they're
right?
in they're
Yeah.
building, huge DCs for these, and so they can lease Flowater for $4 a day, $125 a month.
Raz, I'll be honest. I mean, if I was in an area where I did not trust my water, or I had medical conditions that made me susceptible to illness or some of those kinds of things, one-time investment of $6,000 to make sure my water, plus I think it's $300 for filters. And how long does a filter?
Once a year.
Okay.
So for the big refill station,
Right.
it's 12,000 gallons or once a year. If you would
like, I want to put one of these in my I want to put one of these in my kitchen. Like, now we have good water and we don't have health problems, but I don't think that for a lot of folks where they may be in those conditions, I don't see that as being that unreasonable. You're trying to undersell it in some ways, and I'm kind of saying, if it really does what you say it does, and it's as good as it is, and we took a look on the video feed of the filters and the filtration systems and kind of what that looks like. Yeah, I would. I easily, when I broke my leg, I easily spent $6,000 in expenses and parts and casts and crutches and all kinds of boots and devices to get that done. I don't find that necessarily that unreasonable. So I don't want you to undersell it from that standpoint. Do you find folks, certainly you have it in your house, but are there individuals that are picking it up as well and just like, this is what I want to do? Imagine there are.
There are. I mean, I think this is where,
it
depends, it depends on what the audience is. And this is an audience that probably does have kind of a higher disposable income than what would be maybe a kind of conventional media outlet. But I can't give you the exact number of units that we've sold into homes, but I think you'd be pretty surprised at the pickup that we have had for the right target, the right target audience. And so it's a relatively small device. It looks big on the website. I mean, it's got a 16 by 18 inch footprint. So it's tall because it's just stacked full of purification technology in it. But it's a relatively small footprint. So, California, I've got one in my kitchen and I have a very small kitchen in California, but it's where I put it. And here in Colorado, I have one in my basement.
Yeah, it gives you a pretty good, I'm showing on screen. This kind of gives you a pretty good idea of what, 15, 20 years ago, we bought, people would get Culligan or whatever those services, right? And they would bring the big plastic jugs out to you that they'd put in.
My aunt and uncle still do that. Yeah.
It's about that size. I mean, it's not really that different than that, right? Go ahead.
And the one segment of this that I would just love, and I don't know, maybe it's already happened and I'm just naive to it, but I'm wondering, like, a company like Flowater partnering with all the big refrigerator manufacturers to actually have good filtered water come out of because through all my entire life that I can remember, at least, I've always gotten water from the fridge. That is just where I have gone for water, right? From that dispenser. And, in my adult life, even after I replaced the filter, like, I don't taste any difference. I don't know if that's maybe just, I don't think they do much. At least the ones, that I have, the tiny ones, they're probably pretty similar to one of the really small, like, picture carbon things. I don't even know what's in there, but I would love to have that type of filtration in my refrigerator. Because number one, it's already an appliance I have. And, we're in the process right now of buying new appliances. And I'm like, man, if one of them had a really advanced water filtration that was a lot better, I would pay more for that refrigerator.
Would you?
Like, oh yeah, easy sell for me if it was from a brand that I kind of knew. Like so now that I know about Flowater, I know the details. Man, if that's integrated into a fridge, I'm already buying it. It doesn't take up more space. I'm limited on counter space. I don't have space in my kitchen for the big unit, right? But my fridge is already there, and that's where I go to get my water. That's where my kids get their water. We rarely ever the only thing we use the faucet for is to fill our coffee machine, right?
That's the only time.
Mike, what if
it's probably the only time I drink out of that faucet.
Mike, what if it was a flat unit though? So instead of, because like my only concern is like that why they shouldn't put iPads or tablets into phone or into fridges, because the fridge outlasts the OS, right? And so I'd be a little worried about mixing the two. But Raz, what about a flat unit that would go behind the fridge and be So the water would come into that, do its filtration, and then go back.
Oh,
into
that's
the
not
fridge.
bad. Be like right before the fridge.
sit on top.
That's even easier.
Yeah.
You could retrofit your fridge. That would be huge. If I could retrofit my fridge with something behind it, Jim, I think you're on there. There you go.
I don't know, man. Have you guys
That
thought
is
about
not that specific application, Jim. I'll tell you, not the building in kind of a point of entry behind the fridge. We have thought about under the sink. And we've done some kind of early development of building something that's under the sink so that when you go to fill from the sink, you're getting flow water. Flow water is always coming out of the sink, for example. We have done some very preliminary work, and we do have in the plans to ultimately make flow water filters for your fridge years out. So, I think tied to that a little bit is if we can take kind of this technology that's in the 7X and figure out how to compress it into one of these smaller fridge filters. All of the research that I've heard, I'd be curious, Mike, your perspective on this, but if you needed to change it every 2 months instead of once a year, would you be glad to do that if you knew it was dispensing something far superior to whatever you got in your fridge filter?
Yeah, I mean, we're a family that we do, and maybe, I don't know what the timing is, like that green or red dot at the top of my fridge that tells me I need to change it. We follow it, right? And so we order new filters and we replace it. And so, whatever it meant as far as filters being changed, I'm already doing that in the first place. And I just feel like I don't notice a difference. Like, I'm like, is this really in this filter? I don't know, and it might be due to the fact that I go with the cheap knockoff brands off Amazon. I get those filters because they come faster in a day and I can just get them in there quick. That's probably why. But if I knew the technology that was in there was actually as robust as like your big system, that would make a difference for me. And like I said, 99% of the time I'm getting water, and my whole family's the same way. We go to the fridge. Actually, our main driver for getting a new fridge, our fridge isn't fully broken yet, but that dispenser stopped working a little while ago, and it's driving us absolutely insane. We have an ice maker on our counter, and it's driving us nuts to have to like use the ice. It's funny, those things you get used to, and just the convenience of it. And I think a lot of people too are the same way. The fridge is where they go for the water.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, eliminating, and in fact, saw a couple of things in the chat. One question was about sparkling water. We don't yet do sparkling water, but part of the reason for that is it's complicated to actually do an insane purification process and add sparkling into it. It's really easy to take crummy water and make it carbonated. And then it's hard to go through a super purification system and then also carbonate it as well. So that's one. Two is that the process of carbonation also makes the water more alkaline. So one of the things that we're thinking through is how do we make sure that we kind of keep the alkalinity component of a carbonated water. It's one of the reasons why carbonated water is not necessarily so great for your teeth. I like it as well, but it's not so great for your teeth because of the more acidic nature to it. So that's something that we have in the dev queue. In fact, I have a product dev meeting tomorrow. So I'm making notes along the way of, hey, like we should make sure that we just keep surfacing these items. And then there was one other thing that I was going to go back to. Oh, someone mentioned clean ice as well.
That would be huge, yeah.
Mike, I mean, your point about the friction, though, it's no joke. I mean, this is where, you could look at like sometimes we'll go in and we'll talk to someone that's like the CFO of a company, and they've got these water coolers, these black box water coolers, and they'll be like, look, like, like I pay $70 a month for this. Like, who cares? All water is the same. Like, you can fill up a cup. And at the same time, they're also kvetching about how much bottled water or soda or coffee that they're going through, that they're providing to their employees just as an amenity. They're just grabbing and going. And when you actually dig into the research on it and you ask a consumer, well, hey, why don't you just use that like old school black box water cooler? We've all seen them. They're like literally black boxes, and it has like a push button, right, for hot and cold. People don't use them because they're slow and they're made for cups. So if, like, for example, early in this business, I would go to Google, which is right down the road from where we started the company. I would go to Google and I would just sit there. I mean, I got a pass. I didn't just show up at Google and sneak in, but Just like you guys don't violate interstate rules and ship beer to each other.
Of course.
No.
Yeah,
Just
right,
collectible cans.
right.
Collectible
Yeah,
cans.
I saw that comment. So I would just go and watch people at Google, and Google had like 30 different, I don't know, 30, probably a dozen different types of packaged water. And then they had like the, variety of like water on tap, and then they had water fountains, and then they had water coolers. And what I learned in that was that, and then I would talk to people after, like, hey, why'd you grow that? Why didn't you just grab out of the water cooler and refill? And they're like, oh, it takes too long. It takes like 35 seconds to fill my vessel, and I'm not going to wait 35 seconds. And, those little pieces of friction. So like when we talk about how do we solve for things that change consumer behavior, talking about like friction and the impetus to get a new fridge, and the friction of like filling up an ice maker, right? Well, it's kind of amazing how many places, and you all see this. I mean, if you're in IT or you're in tech, fraction of a second on a checkout page could be the difference between a great take rate and a horrible take rate, right? So we look at ways of how do we remove friction and make things easier. So for example, that Flowater refill station you see right there has a preset fill size button. You hit a 750 ml, your bottle will be filled in under 10 seconds. And it will be on demand. You will never have any latency. We could do 50 back-to-back fills, which is why every ounce of that space inside there is being utilized. But some of it is creating a cool brand around it that people remember and they like and they trust. It's a little bit like the beer label. I mean, not to like tie all this back, but so many parallels between what beer has done for packaging and labeling and branding and story and affinity translate into water in many ways. But then it's also, how easy do you make it? Like, how do you eliminate the things that are super annoying that cause you not to use something? And a water fountain's the same way. People didn't like water fountains before the pandemic. Now they're absolutely disgusting. Like I have yet to see a water fountain not taped off post pandemic. And that's one of the areas our business is exploding, of course, is anywhere there was a water fountain. If you want to have something that's touchless, we have a foot pedal that goes on these, as well as a very inexpensive add-on where you don't have to touch anything. You just put the bottle under. And we also have a sensor that we're going to be launching later this year as well. So I think
we're Gadget guys. You should have voice integration in that with it as well. Hey, fill my bottle, or give me 50 ounces of water.
We're working with Microsoft. Microsoft. We're actually working with Microsoft and Azure Sphere.
Oh, good.
For an IoT connected device. And so that's going to go in the product development meeting tomorrow, good. Jim. Yeah. The topic called self-directing what you want filled.
Right. Yeah, because post-pandemic, people don't even want to touch anything. It's funny, and I've gone in a couple times in the last couple weeks we're trying to slowly restart our office, and like everybody's just hands in their pockets, like 6 feet from each other, kind of walking around, like, and then people are going through doors with their shoulders, and we have the foot things on the doors, so you don't even have to touch it. Nobody wants to touch anything. And so it's funny, we couldn't get anybody to clean the kitchen pre-pandemic, and now when everybody's done, they're wiping everything down. Like, I don't know how long that's going to last, but man, I think that'd be a great thing to just say, hey, Flowater, give me 50 ounces of water, and the thing just, that'd be
and I think there's especially for your different segments of your market, right? But for probably some of the higher disposable income markets, I think convenience and aesthetics, right? Like, make it super convenient, make it something I can tell all my friends the really cool stuff that's in my, water thing, right? Because like, those types of people, like, you want to like talk about it, right? You want to talk about, ooh, taste this water, it's really good. And then aesthetics, right? I want this to blend right in. I almost don't want to notice it's there, but it have it be there. At least that's,
if you ship me one, I'll put it right here. No, just kidding.
But I think those are the types of things. And so like when you mentioned the under the sink one, because my faucet's the one you mentioned doesn't have a screw top, right? So I can't put it there. But under the sink, convenient. It's just there whenever I turn it on, and the aesthetics are great, right? And the approval factor from the wife is high because she doesn't even notice anything. So like all of those, I think are great. I'm excited to see your countertop model too. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun project. We're actually going to do we're debating, kind of going back to the cool factor comment. I had I hosted kind of company-wide an ideation session yesterday. Normally we just do a monthly huddle, and there's an agenda and there's speakers, and which is all fine. I mean, sometimes I'm the speaker, which I'm sure is annoying after years of hearing, me speak. So yesterday what we did was something a little different. We shook it up and really kind of came up with an ideation session. One of the ideas that came up a couple of times, which I thought was so good, was kind of doing artist rendition series of like flow waterizing your countertop or flow waterizing your refill station. So like those polycarbonate panels that are on there, we also have white ones. We also have charcoal ones that are really muted, so it kind of fits in decor. But several people came up with this cool idea of, well, like, hey, let's go commission like, maybe pick your favorite genre of artists and go create something so that it has like a little bit of extra kind of sex appeal to it.
Yeah.
And same for the countertop unit at home. So we're looking into some of those things. So I think you nailed it though, is the convenience, the aesthetics, the way that we kind of break it down is trust and taste. So like that's from the water perspective, but then when you get it into the consumer household, like what is the brand have to represent? World's best tasting water, world's most trusted water, just over and over again. That's what we resonate. But then once you get into the home in particular, convenience aesthets, you're exactly right. Totally agree with that.
I'd love to see, again, since we're ideating here with some ideas, we always like to see the difference it's making. So like the water coming in and the water coming out, I get some kind of like
metric.
Hey, purified it this much, or something along those lines, because we're all data nerds. Like we obsess about space on hard drives and how many gigahertz the processor is and how much RAM that I have. So it'd be interesting to have some, to think through, because I always think, man, I'd love to know, because that's a bragging point, right? That's
well,
like,
it's that counter
right?
that you see that's like, how many bottles of water has this water fountain saved?
Oh,
have you seen that counter
yeah.
on those things? Like I see them all the time. I think that's super cool. Like at Creighton, where I went to college, they have those all over campus. And this fountain alone has saved this many water bottles from ending up in landfills. I always thought that was a cool little metric. We're metric people here.
Yeah. No, this audience obsesses about that. Oh, we lost him. Shoot, he'll come back here in just a second. Mike, while we're getting Raz back, just a reminder, Hydrate 20, it's on the video right down at the bottom. Hydrate 20, all one word there. And the address is drinkflowaterathome.com. Raz, we lost you for just a second, but we ran the promo for you down below there on the video while you were gone. Hopefully we'll get your video and audio back. Are you back with us? Can you hear us?
Looks like his connection's dropping out.
While he's figuring out, his kids are probably playing. What's that new game that all the kids are playing, Mike? What are you?
Valheim.
Valheim.
Yeah.
I bet his kids are playing Valheim right now. I bet that's what's happening. So, Mike, while we get Raz back, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I love this ideation thing at the end here. As far as
me too,
this could be a super nerdy thing to have. Like, I'd love to have this underneath my sink.
Well,
sorry.
No worries.
I got kicked off my Wi-Fi network, so I apologize.
It happens, Russ. I was asking Mike a little bit, hey, what do you think? What his initial impressions of this?
Yeah, and I said I really like the kind of the ideas we've been going through, and what I like about this is that I honestly didn't know that the purified water, all the water industry was something that people were trying to come in and really make a big difference in, right? I thought, okay, well, there's filters, people are just it's a status quo. So that's what I loved about this conversation, was hearing all the different ways and hearing all the different products you guys have on your horizon. It's changing, right? And these things are going to get better. They're going to get more convenient. They're going to be, I didn't know all the stats either. I didn't admit this early on, but I have a bad habit of grabbing a lot of bottled water on the go, because we do a lot of road trips down to the farm, constantly doing bottled water in there. I take a big jug, but then we grab those on the go to refill the jug, and never thought anything of it really. In my family, like when I was a kid, like we did a lot of bottled water. It was kind of like the on the go kind of thing. I think it was more of a uniform taste thing for us. Like it just kind of like wherever you went, you knew what your Dasani or whatever all those tasted like. But so very interesting to hear the stats. Jim, I liked your idea. Raz, I don't know if you caught it. So we were talking about, I love, and Jim loves, Jim brought this up, like metric tracking. So any sort of like, hey, it went in like this, it came out like this. This is how much got purified. Or I love those counters that are like, this is how many water bottles were saved by this machine. We love the sort of metric tracking, and that would be really cool to see.
The brag factor. I think we lost him again.
I think we lost him again.
I think we did. It's okay. You back, Raz? You with us?
Well, I just switched networks. So it's kind of, this is going to be a great idea, I have a feeling, because I've now missed it twice. So there's some like forces that are trying to keep me away from this breakthrough.
You have to go back and listen to it.
All right,
no, the idea is just some metrics around bottle
paper
save,
and pen and everything. Yeah, bottle saved.
Bottle saved, some kind of filtration. Just those bragging numbers, right? I mean, we all do this ourselves. I got 80 terabytes of storage in my network, and some of those kinds of things. So.
Yeah, that's a good idea. The gamification on it ends up being a real behavior driver. On the refill station, there actually is a bottle counter.
Oh, good.
So, and sometimes it's so funny. I mean, I've now been looking at the thing for 8 years. We're on our 5th generation of it, but so it's improved, but that bottle counter is still there. And I sometimes forget the impact of that. And sometimes we'll go into school districts where they'll have like 8 different schools, and each school has 3 or 4 Flowater refill stations. And they've kind of created their own competition where they're like trying to save the number of bottles or drink more water. This is why, like, what I've got 2 daughters that are 17 and 19. So my daughters, Royce and Zoe, were 10 and 11, 9 and 10, actually, when I co-founded Flowater. And one of the reasons that I got excited about this, there were several, but one of them was, I'd take them to soccer practice. And then after, and this is in the Bay. I mean, this is like not my heartland where I grew up, Ohio, which like, I feel like I grew up on Twinkies and Cokes, and like, in the Bay, it's something bougier than it's kale. No, it's not. Kale it's like chips. Sugar. It's like sugared kale, though. It's like it's still the same junk food. It's just like bougier than Twinkies, right? I don't think my kids even knew what a Twinkie was till like 2 years ago. So
Twinkie wrapped in rice.
yeah, right. So what is cool about this bottle counter, and kind of going back, but to the impetus to like even me getting in this mission was changing consumer behavior. And I typically like I often talk to my sales organization that kind of fab selling, like feature advantage benefit, which is kind of everything we all grew up with probably, or learned, or was classically trained around feature advantage benefit selling, I think is very dead, and what I think is in the world now is really outcomes. I mean, behavioral outcomes or changed behavior. And so when we drop in a Flowater refill station, we'll actually see consumers drink 2 to 5 times more water than they were before. Like, so we'll do pre-post data on this. So we'll like take measurements on their water consumption 30 days before a Flowater unit, for example. We'll drop the Flowater in. We're not changing anything else. Like, we're not ripping anything out. If they're selling bottled water or they're giving bottled water away for free, we say leave it in there and just see what happens organically after we put a Flowater refill station in. And 30 days after, we'll see a 50% reduction in soda and coffee consumption, totally voluntarily. And then we'll see a 2 to 5-fold increase in hydration. And I think one of the things that drives that too, just going back, is this counter, like seeing the number. Like, I'll even kind of subconsciously look and be like, oh, I got to do like 300 this week. Like, that's how much I gotta drink. Like, this is the new metric. So you're right. Once we tie that to the phone, like, I think what will be really interesting from a data perspective though, will be when you look at tying like water consumption to your app, and then you tie that into like work and productivity, or your watch and like sleep, someday you're going to be able to tell your level of hydration and how it positively affects sleep or business performance or your sick days. And so there's kind of a big data to water too, which it might sound, I don't know, I don't think it sound ridiculous to this audience, but it might sound a little ridiculous to some, but the reality is, like, this is like water ends up being one of the basic necessities of life. 70 to 80% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. So what if we were to actually get people hydrated again? Like, what would happen to ADHD or performance or sick days or obesity and satiety? Has a huge impact on being dehydrated makes you hungrier because you're not getting enough water, and you're getting water through food. It's not a very efficient way to get water, but that's one of the ways. So those are actually inextricably linked. And so I actually think this idea of kind of big data around water and tying it down to the device level and tracking it with metrics will end up being pretty fascinating in terms of what we learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just think about as I get close to the device, syncs with my watch, it gets that information in, it knows. I mean, there's just so many things you can do with that to think of, as you said, the gamification of it. And I get some of the most positive results I've had have been around where I've tracked it, and then you're just like, okay, that like I'm getting there. I'm trying to do a little bit better each and every day. So no, that's pretty great. Well, Raz, we've taken a bunch of your time. Anything we missed?
I think we covered it all.
We got it. Okay.
I think we did it. I think we you guys are a lot of fun. This is the most fun I've had.
Good.
On a podcast,
well,
video cast. So thank you.
If we invited you back at some point,
yeah, of course, absolutely. Right, I'd love to do this in person. Do you guys ever, in normal times, do you ever do these together? I mean, I assume you guys are neighbors, right?
Well, Mike lives across town, so that's 30 minutes.
That's what I meant by neighbors.
On the other side of town, right? And I think we've only podcasted together once. And we maybe a couple times a year we get together, right, Mike?
Well, the thing we joked about too was okay, so we met right when we started, like we met up, I think, for lunch, and then from that point we podcasted together for 3 years, I think, had never seen each other in person, and we met up in DC when we were both out there for work. Like we live in the same town, but it took both of us being in DC for work to actually be together. But yeah,
that is hysterical. Well,
I posted a picture and he was like, "Hey, are you in DC?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I am too."
I know we don't do this in Omaha, but we should. Yeah. So now when we hang out, it's not podcast related. It's just hanging out.
Raz, just a reminder, if folks want to try it, this is probably the best way to do it, right? There's the Flowater on the go. You can order a pack. You've got the Hydrate 20 that you can use to get 20% off. Drink flowater@home.com if you want to give it a try and kind of taste it without having to do. And then don't forget, I'm giving away 2 of the faucet. Just remember, if you have one of those pull down, it doesn't work. And so it needs to have the one where you can kind of screw that filter into it. And I'd just love to provide them for folks where you feel like your water might be suspect. So we want to give that a try, get that in there. We'll get some feedback from you, some of those kinds of things. So if you're interested in that, send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. I'll just ship it to you free of charge. You can give it a try, take a couple pictures and get it back to us. Raz, thanks for coming on.
Jim and Mike, pleasure, gentlemen. Thanks for your audience and both of you enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
We enjoyed it as well. Have a great evening. And thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thanks again, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Jim, I love your refrigerator retrofit idea. If that comes out, I would for sure be a purchaser of that. Like that is because I don't know, like for me, it's just that's where I go for my water, right? I think it always depends on where people go to get their water. Like I said, going back to convenience, right? And for us, that's the fridge. Man, if that could be the source of it, I didn't even think about your idea of just like strapping something to the back. I'm thinking of like integrating it into the fridge. Well, having it just be the inlet of the water. That's genius.
He's got a point in the sense that replacing those filters is the hard part. And if it creates friction to have to pull that fridge out every 6 months or every year to replace those filters, the filters aren't very big. We showed pictures of them here during the live show. It's kind of a standard. It's like the size of a beer can, maybe a little bit taller, but they seem about this round. You could get that behind your fridge. Now, not everybody's fridge, like some have super hyper built-in fridges that you don't have that space, and maybe but I was thinking, something that could go somewhere close. Jim Shoemaker in the chat room was saying, something like, I'd even, Mike, the line for my fridge comes up from the basement. So the water it's tapped on a line from the basement.
Yep.
So I could take a unit, attach it to the wall and run it up that way, or run, there's, if you're going to run it, maybe there's a situation, if I'm going to run it to the sink, you don't want to replumb for this. That's the problem, right? There's a friction moment, right, if you're having to replumb for it. So I'm gonna watch these guys for either that. I wouldn't do a desktop or a countertop one. I would love an under the counter because that's where the space is. I
Same
want to
here.
hide it.
Yep. Well,
You
now,
know?
yeah, the aesthetics is the other part too, right? Like, and I didn't just mean design on the front of the unit. It's more of just like
Right.
it needs to kind of blend in, right?
Right,
Not
right.
really.
Or look super cool. Like
Yeah,
if it
yeah, or be
looks
like a centerpiece, right?
right.
If it's a centerpiece, and maybe they're getting to that point with the artwork or something.
Yeah. Joe has a good comment. He says maybe the countertop could just sit next to the fridge and you just like set it next, on the counter next to the fridge, and it could come in, provide water there and through the fridge.
Yeah.
Something like that. Just kind of depends on habits. I don't go to the fridge for the water. We have a pitcher and I just pull the pitcher out. I'd love something.
Does your refrigerator have the option right now, or do you guys just not even
We
mess
do.
with that?
No, we
Yeah.
do. But like that filter gets all gummed up, and those filters are crappy.
That's what I was saying. So like, if they could even
Retro.
break into retrofit, or even better, like go
Yeah.
all out and try and get into the assembly line of the LGs and the Whirlpool, whoever, I don't know what other brands make.
I can't imagine there's that many sizes to those filters. To mine looks like a car oil filter. That's and it's a quarter twist backwards and the thing pops out, right?
Mine actually kind of looked like their filters that they had.
Okay. Yeah.
Mine's like that cylindrical, very skinny. It's got a little nipple on the top,
beer
right?
can. Yeah, kind of beer can.
Well,
Like
ours
two
really
beer cans.
long.
Yeah, like 2 beer cans.
Yeah. Oh, height wise. Yep. And ours is like below our fridge. I don't know if that's where
Mhm.
yours is. And so it's like under the fridge. You just unscrew.
No,
the
ours is inside the fridge.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's
the
way
water,
my in-laws
it's
was
cold.
too.
It chills the water in the filter, and then as you go, because filter holds about a cup, so to speak. Yeah, it's definitely a space ripe for disruption in this area, and it's kind of cool. Like that, I want one. I want one of the big units. That just looks
Crank into the
cool.
water down there.
Yeah,
You have a restroom in your basement too, because you would need
there's a spot right. See, I have that curtain right here.
Yep.
There's this spot right there for it, Raz. Just saying, we could make a deal. Mike, we haven't podcasted. I skipped last week, by the way. Thanks to everybody who gave me the week off. Appreciate you guys doing that. Nobody got mad at me or sent me an email. It was really needed. I just had a very long week, and I think I pinged you on Tuesday. And I was like, I'm not doing it. I knew.
And you rarely ever do that, so I was like, it must be a stressful week for you.
It was going to just be a crazy week. You're coming off a little bit of vacation as well. I think next week we should probably talk a little Unraid, because we've had an Unraid upgrade in the process.
Yeah,
been working on getting John back from Unraid, so we'll have those conversations. I'm sure we got a bunch of any other gadget stuff, any new stuff that you've tried over the last couple of weeks, or
not gadgets, but we have been. It's actually pretty fun. I posted it out in the Discord, and a few people joined. We started just a fun little Valheim server. So
let's talk about that, because my kids are all into that. Let's talk about it. No, next week. Next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. But just if you real quick, if you want to go out to the Discord, you can get the invite if you already know what we're talking about. Otherwise, we'll talk about that more next week. But we do have our own dedicated server that's hosted on my Unraid box.
Nice. Yeah. So theaverageguy.tv/Discord, if you want to get that information there. Some really good conversations going on this week. I apologize. I have not been able to keep up with many of them, but you guys don't seem to care. It seems like they're going on just fine. So,
I love it. It's like, just awesome conversation. Because I'm the same way. I've been extremely busy. I have even my own personal Discord I've been neglectful of. So
yeah, well, we're going to talk about it in the future. I've gone from the Cybertruck to the Series 3 to now the Y.
Oh, really? That's where you're settling?
That's well, I don't know. We'll see. Like, I'm waiting to see what kind of federal incentives kick in. Like, I don't have to do anything right now. So I'm just kind of waiting to see. And if that happens, I'm going to pounce. Like, if that money becomes available, I'm taking whatever I can get my hands on from that perspective. If I don't get the Cybertruck, I'll get that money back. And so, that's been my thought. I've been thinking a lot about that lately, watching a lot of YouTube videos and just like, okay. John Biggs got his Tesla delivered, and he got the Y. And of course, Dwayne, you missed Dwayne Robinson 2 weeks ago. He's got a Model 3 or Series 3, right?
He's a few, hasn't he? Or maybe he just had
No, I think it's his first Tesla.
Okay.
Yeah, first Tesla. His, if you didn't listen, you got to go back. He nearly burned his RV down. Listen, Dwayne did not have the best 2020. Like on top of the pandemic, all kinds of things went wrong. Did you ever see that old movie from the 80s called The Money Pit, where they buy this house and everything kind of breaks? Dwayne's had that kind of year.
Oh, I gotta go back and listen to it.
Yeah, everything that has gone wrong went wrong. And you know what's great is he was in great spirits. It had been a year. It had almost been a full year. I think we talked to him in February of 2020, so pre-pandemic, so to speak. And it's just he moved. They completely had to redo the house. He had some patio problems. He has a pool now, which is always a disaster. The RV nearly burned down. I mean, it's kind of, not funny, but he tells it pretty funny. So you might, if you missed 482, that's Dwayne Robinson. And it's always good to be with Dwayne. We had a good time hanging out with him. Speaking of that, you can hang out with us every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. Big thanks again to our Patreon subscribers. Appreciate you guys for all that you do for your pledge of $5 or more, and just kind of helps keep things around here kind of moving and shaking. So appreciate that. Maybe they'll even pay for a new, a new
Flowater's full system, huh?
You never know. So appreciate you guys in all that you do and supporting the show in all the ways that you can. Mention the Discord group, theaverageguy.tv/Discord. Don't forget, you can still leave us a message. And this is something, Mike, I'm going to really work on this spring and summer. We'd like to get your voice on this call. So leave us a message. The easiest way to do that, homegadgetgeeks.com. There's a little microphone in the right-hand corner. It's over there in the right-hand corner when you get there. And leave us a 30-second message. It can be anything. We just love to hear from you. If you got a question, if you have a comment, if you want to leave a Baba Booey, any of those things that are there, you can do that as well. HomeGadgetGeeks.com. You can send me an email if you want to get in on these Flowater. Like, again, I've got 2 of them here, and we kind of want to hear the story. I want to hear, like, how bad is your water? And how well will a $60 device work for you? It's got a filter in it, brand new. I'll ship those to you, United States only, but send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Love to ship that out to you. And by the way, Patreon helps with that as well, helps pay the shipping on those things. So appreciate you guys. Don't forget Home Gadget Geeks, both web and media hosting, or theaverageguy.tv, both web and media hosting, powered by Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. Christian has plans that start as little as $10 a month for some pretty rocking services. So check it out, maplegrovepartners.com. Don't forget theaverageguy.tv/Coinbase as well. Mike, I'm hearing just before we go, I'm hearing all these crazy rumors of Bitcoin going to 150,000, and that just seems ridiculous. But then when we were talking about this in 2018, did you ever think we'd hit 60?
Yeah, no. Nothing's out of the realm of possibilities. Now, there's just the one thing that I have learned in the last few months is, because it happens with, like, if you get into penny stocks at all, or though, like the small cryptos or even big cryptos like Bitcoin, it's just like right now it's like nothing's unattainable. It's like everything's to the moon, right? And like diamond hands, and like everything has that mentality right now. So I think everyone's just excited. I don't think it's out of the possibility. I definitely don't think that, but I think
I'm hearing that in certain circles.
It's which it's doing it.
I remember when we had Edward on the first time, and Bitcoin was at $264.
Yeah.
$264 the first time we had him on here. And I remember him saying something about, 10,000 or 20,000 or something like that. I was like, you're crazy. That's what I thought. Don't tell Edward I said that, because he's a good friend, but he was crazy. No, apparently not. And then so you're like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Right. So then it dips, and there's all these people say, oh, it's going to go. And you're like, you're crazy. Well, it did. Now, this is the hard part. Is 3 times a charm? Like, nobody knows. You just don't know, right? You can't. So
There's no
Don't-
thesis to reference here.
Don't
right?
make
There's
stupid.
no
No, there's no
history
well,
to it. There,
even in
this
the
is all-
market. Even in the market, we can't predict these things. So stop trying. This is not financial advice. We're not telling you what to do. I'm just saying it's crazy.
Yeah.
it's just crazy. Check out theaverageguy.tv/Coinbase if you want to jump in. At least again, just learn about it. Use it to learn. And you can trade if you want. So we are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv live. If you're listening live, we'll do a short little post show. With that, we'll say goodbye.